April 1915. The days grew hotter as the Egyptian summer marched on. As the sun burnt fiercer, the men became edgier. There was still no sign of war for them. Some of the infantry had been called away to fight a skirmish against the Turks, but everyone else remained in camp, wilting in the heat. They felt frustrated and useless. The mounted riflemen and their horses spent long days trekking across the scorching desert. The blistering summer Khamsin winds peppered their faces with sand, clogging their eyes and noses with choking dust. The horses trudged on, lugging their riders and heavy gear. Sometimes it was so hot that poor Tui would flop to the ground with Billy resting against her side, her body casting the only shade to be found. When they returned to camp, caked in dust and tired to the bone, the men always watered, fed and groomed their horses before drinking, eating and washing themselves. The exhausted horses stood in their stalls, heads hanging low and tails swishing against the constant swarms of flies. The corners of their mouths and eyes were soon covered in sores from fly bites. The ticks were even worse. They crawled up the horses' legs and fastened onto their bellies, sucking their blood. Major Joe showed the men how to burn the ticks off with the lit end of a cigarette. He also showed them how to fit cord fringes to the brow bands of the horses' halters, the swaying cords helping to keep the flies at bay. Several epidemics swept through the horse lines in the first few months in Egypt, including ringworm and influenza. Major Joe's work was never done. He was relieved when 2 veterinary sections arrived from home. Each section was like the horse equivalent of a field hospital and could treat up to 250 horses. Sick parades were held every morning to check on the horses and treat the sick or sore. And still the endless desert training continued. Chopper was getting bored and restless. He was looking for some action. One morning, as they practiced scrambling up yet another ridge to bayonet dummy men stuffed with sand, he yelled a challenge to Billy. "Hey, hero Billy boy, with the fastest horse in camp and the sharpest eye. Reckon you can shoot that dummy stuck on the hill, gallop up, stab it through with your bayonet, and get back down here before Trojan and me?" "Course he can," Jack cried before Billy could reply. "I bet you a night out in Cairo, all expenses paid." "You're on," Chopper hollered back. They both looked at Billy. "Well," Jack said, "you better ask Tui, she's got to do all the running." Chopper and Jack rolled their eyes beneath their dusty slouch hats. "Okay, sure, I can do it," Billy sighed. "Right then," Jack said, sounding bossy and official. "Line up your horses and on my pistol shot, gallop off, second pistol shot, dismount, aim and shoot the dummy. Remount, gallop up the hill, run the dummy through and gallop back down. Easy. Last one back is a loser." Billy and Chopper rode Tui and Trojan up to the line Jack scraped in the sand with his boot. Both horses sensed something was up and began jigging on the spot, their riders fighting to hold them back. Trojan snorted and reared. Tui pranced and danced. Chopper looked across at Billy and winked. Right at the moment Jack fired his pistol. The horses rocketed into the air, nearly leaving their riders behind. "Go, go, go!" All the men of the squadron clamoured behind them, as if the horses needed any encouragement. Tui and Trojan galloped full tilt across the sand, almost neck and neck at first, but Tui was pulling ahead with every stride. Sweat and dust clung to the horses' necks, flecks streamed into their riders' eyes. When the second pistol shot cracked, Billy hurtled from his saddle. He dropped to the dust at the same time as he pulled his rifle from his shoulder. He took aim at the dummy on the ridge, breathing deeply even though the scorching air burnt his lungs. Next to him, Chopper thumped to the ground and scrambled for his own rifle. Billy fired. The squadron whooped and cheered. Billy had hit his target. He leapt back on Tui and tapped her sides, but she didn't need asking. She was off in a hail of dust. Billy closed his eyes and lay against her neck as her legs hammered across the ground. She galloped faster than she'd ever galloped before. She was flying across the sands. They hit the bottom of the ridge at a run, and still she didn't slow down. She launched up the steep hill, her powerful legs pelting up the sands. Billy leant forward in the saddle, helping take the strain. He could hear Chopper and Trojan galloping towards the hill. He knew he and Tui would make it up to the dummy well before them. Suddenly, Tui reared up in the sand, flipping backwards. 1 minute, Billy was leaning over her neck, riding full tilt. The next, they were both tumbling through the air. He smashed to the ground with a thud and rolled down the hill. When he looked up, he saw Trojan's legs pounding towards him. The big grey horse was going to gallop right over him. At the last minute, Trojan lurched sideways and leapt over Billy, unseating Chopper. Chopper yelped and thumped to the ground next to him. "Well, that was fun," Chopper said, sitting up and spitting sand. Billy and Chopper sat watching their horses gallop off across the desert, still running their own race. "You idiot. What did you do that for?" Billy could hear Jack yelling at Chopper as he came sprinting up to them. "You could have killed him." "He looks all right to me. You all right?" Chopper asked Billy. "Yeah, I'm okay. What happened?" "That idiot only shot Tooey," snorted Jack. "She didn't know what hit her." "It was only a pebble from a slingshot," Chopper said, holding up a forked stick and grinning sheepishly. "Scared her a little is all. Didn't expect her to flip like that." "Trojan did all he could to avoid stomping on you," Jack told Billy. "You'd be dead meat if it wasn't for his horse." "Guess the old nag remembered who saved his skin back there in the boat," Chopper said, rubbing his neck with a dusty hand. "So, how about hitting the streets of Cairo tonight, Jacko?" Chopper suggested a few days later. "It's about time I worked off my debt and shouted you that night out on the town. Or are you too scared to check out Cairo after dark? And I guess it's way past your bedtime, Billy boy. Come on, Billy, let's go see what all the fuss is about." "We don't have to do anything stupid," Jack encouraged him. The fuss Jack was referring to was all the warnings the troops kept receiving from the officers and regimental chaplains about the dangers of nighttime Cairo. Often Billy heard Chopper and the men returning from nights out on the town, roaring and carousing before rolling into bed. Curiosity got the better of Billy and he agreed to go. The boys joined Chopper and the other troopers from their tent and caught a gharry into the city. They visited an area of Cairo called the Wazir where dingy, narrow alleyways swarmed with beggars, peddlers, tricksters and crooks. Women hung over the balconies, their veils gone, shouting down to the men in the streets. Chopper kept ducking in and out of dark cafes and downstairs dens, his face more flushed each time he emerged. He started bartering with one wizened old man selling an amazing-looking jewelled sword. The man insisted it was an antique dervish sword, many centuries old, used by famous Pasha, he said. "Yeah, right," said Chopper. "You mean it's brand new and been left to rust in the Nile so it looks old? I'll give you 2 piastres. "You joke," the man said, throwing up his wrinkled hands. "I take long time to make sword." They haggled back and forth until Chopper got his cheap price. "Go, go," the old man said with disgust. "I no want see you again." Chopper grinned, shoving the sword in its scabbard down his breeches. Billy and Jack followed Chopper as he weaved along the alleyways. The narrow streets were thick with troops, some with their arms draped across their mates' shoulders, others collapsed in dark doorways. A few minutes later, Billy spotted a young boy trying to lead a donkey, loaded up with shoeshine gear, through the throngs. He watched as 2 very large and very drunk soldiers approached, one clutching a beer bottle. "Hey, let's give this lad's donkey a drink or 2, he hollered. He grabbed the poor donkey by the jaw and started pouring beer down its throat. "No, please. Stop, mister. It'd make him sick," the boy pleaded, yanking at the soldier's sleeve. The soldier kept pouring beer down the donkey's throat. The little boy became more and more upset, jumping up and down, trying to pull the big man away. "Please no, he my donkey, he gets sick." The big soldier brushed him off like he was a pesky fly. Billy couldn't watch any longer. He walked up to the much bigger man, snatching the bottle of beer from him. "Leave him alone," he said. "Come on, it's just a bit of fun," the soldier slurred. He still held the donkey by its neck. "I don't think it's fun for the boy or the donkey. Let go." The big soldier turned on him, his eyes bloodshot and angry. "And what if I say nah? What you going to do about it?" To Billy's surprise, Chopper strode up. "I don't know what he's going to do about it, but I'm happy to show you what I'll do." "Let the donk go. Now." The big soldier eyed Chopper for a second and then shrugged. "Cor blimey, what's the world coming to when a bloke can't have some fun?" He turned away from them, lurching off down the alleyway. Chopper looked at Billy. "For a little squirt, you sure got guts, or else you're ruddy stupid." Only a few nights later, on Good Friday, the 2nd of April, a riot broke out on the streets of the Wazir. Australian and New Zealand soldiers, some drunk, many simply bored and frustrated, looted and set fire to shops. The riot was finally broken up by Anzac mounted troops. Billy was pleased it didn't include his Wellington mounted rifles. The very next day, the New Zealand and Australian infantry received orders to prepare for war. They were heading to a place called Gallipoli, but the mounted riflemen weren't going. "The steep cliffs and narrow beaches of Gallipoli are no place for horses," their commander explained. The mounted riflemen were bitterly disappointed. "They're leaving us to rot here in this ruddy desert," Chopper swore when he heard the news. The mounted shook hands with the infantrymen as they headed off to far distant beaches to fight the Turks. All they had to look forward to was even more training and marching across an ever-scorching desert.